And we are live.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Workshop for June 14th, 2021. And the first thing we have on our agenda is going to be the Dispatch User Group IGA discussion. Sheriff Nellen, do you want to come up and...
And so while
Give us
he's
your-
coming up, commissioners, the dispatch users, which involves all the fire districts, the hospital, all the law enforcement, have had some concerns that they've been flushing out over the last year or so, a little longer than a year. And so the sheriff and myself and Chief Knuckles and at the time John Doherty and in large part Heather Alvarez and Marshall Goodall worked together to rewrite the current IGA, and then the sheriff's attorney has sent a letter to the city saying that they won't continue, which I believe is under the current IGA, and so we need to know, for this new IGA, we need to know if we're signing on with everybody else or if we're shopping dispatch services elsewhere and what that's going to cost. And there's another intricacy of that, in that this board is also the 911 authority board for both ourselves and Dolores County. And so that's a dynamic that has to be considered also. So with that, I'll let the sheriff address concerns he has. You guys can ask questions that you have, and we'll see if this leads to a signature and a resolution tomorrow or what happens. Of course, for those out in YouTube land, no decisions can be made today in the workshop.
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners and everybody. Last year, as in previous years, the user groups consisted of every fire district, the hospital, as well as Mancos and the Cortez Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. And I know that there's Dolores County and Mesa Verde National Park. It's also utilized the dispatch center from time to time throughout the year. And they would often have representation there as well. What started all this off was the cost, or the anticipated cost, that the sheriff was going to have to encounter with the dispatch fees that were going to increase significantly. I started out with $170,000 back in 2015, 2016, and it has increased into this last year's cost of almost $294,000. Even though our calls for service have increased tremendously, and it's not going to stop. However, the big thing is that we wanted to come to some type of an agreement where the cost would be fairly allocated and not to the point where it's unreasonable. And the big question came up with what the city of Cortez was charging the county and other users, as well as what the costs were and what it was that we were paying for. And so we had asked for an independent audit, and as of this date, we still don't have one, a full independent audit, but mainly because the city of Cortez was going through several years of past audits. So this was supposed to be a standalone dispatch center with the users being the main body of the dispatch center, because those were the ones that were using it. We all have our own frequencies that are licensed to our independent agencies. And so we obtained we looked around, and Lori Johnson, the dispatch supervisor, during the first year's meeting, we talked about a possible new agreement to try and come up with a regional dispatch center agreement with all of the users. And we reached out to several, and we got a regional dispatch center agreement from Montrose, Colorado. So taking that and breaking it down, I was asked to try and come up with a draft, which we did, and it has since evolved greatly into what we have today. And there's been a lot of discussion and whatnot about, especially with the historical implications of how this all came about. And when the Colorado State Patrol, when we were all in the Justice Building that housed all of the agencies, the Colorado State Patrol provided the dispatch services for all of the agencies. And there were agreements on cost sharing back then. I don't have any of those records, those historical records about what that cost was, but I don't believe it was very significant at all. The dispatch services were mainly provided by the State Patrol, which was their contributing part of being housed within the Justice Building in Cortez. All of the maintenance was done by both the city and the county at that time. But when they left and moved to centralized dispatching throughout the state, they implemented the Montrose Dispatch Center that left the dispatch center here for all of the other users except for the State Patrol. That was back in 1997. In 1997, there was an agreement that was signed by a representative with the city of Cortez and the county of Montezuma about what agreements there would be and costs and so on and so forth. Because the city and county did not have, it was intended for it to be a separate standalone dispatch center. And I know that there were some land considerations within that in the past. I've seen historical documents about this lot and that area and so on and so forth, but you know, that's all gone, that's all history now. And even this agreement that was signed back in 1997, it's all historic now. So we've come to this point now where this has grown into a situation that I was alarmed by the continual increase in costs to the county taxpayers through the sheriff's office for our dispatching fees. And so we had a lot of discussions that went around through that, and there were a lot of there's a lot of look at the financial aspects from everybody, including Heather Alvarez with the town of Mancos, and Shaq Powers and myself and Marshall Goodall. The thing is, though, is that we've got to come up with a solution of how dispatch fees can be evenly and fairly distributed throughout that center. As I look at this new agreement, it was changed from the users to the local governments. My argument from the very beginning when this came up is that the city of Cortez claimed that that dispatch center was theirs. And I disagreed with that. I was here back during that time. I worked as a peace officer here for, since 1975, and I know what that was like here. But there was no place for it to put. So the police department did take that and put it in the police department because we were right there by the towers and everything else. We just had to move it from one building to another. And that's kind of where it's been ever since. So my concern is that we've got to come up with a fair cost, because every year since then I can go look back in the sheriff's office budgets from the previous sheriffs, and I can see a dispatch center fee. Okay, most every agency including the fire departments, had that same in their budget, their annual budgets. And we were given that fee. I mean, I knew what the costs were going to be by the chief of police, Roy Lane, at the time. I knew what that was going to be in advance and could try and budget for that. It has, what got me was when we saw some of these budgets where the police department used to have the majority of the calls until just the last couple of years, and we have far exceeded them. But there was never a dispatch fee in the Cortez Police Department budget that we ever saw or were told, which was concerning because we didn't know what their contributing amount was going to be, even though all of the dispatchers are employees of the city of Cortez. And I know that there's been a lot of expenses that have been co-shared between the city and the county. What all of those are exactly, I don't know. All I do know is that I have to, like I have said in the past, is that I will work, and I need to, and I will continue to work with every single agency because that's my number one priority. And I don't want to get into the weeds and the bickering about things. And so it's been kind of shifted to where it falls upon the boards of the fire departments and the local towns. Like the town of Dolores has never been involved in any of this. I paid that percentage of calls for service in the town of Dolores under my contract with the town. And so they were taken care of. So this has kind of been a whole new thing for the town manager in Dolores, I'm sure. And, you know, the thing is that I know that I'm looked upon to give some leadership and guidance with this. And the only thing I ask is that we've got to come up with what my number one concern was, a reasonable and fair cost for a service. And when we look at the regional dispatch center in Montrose, and it's been brought up several times that the sheriff's office in Montrose is paying close to $600,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And I just don't know that that we can sustain that. I really don't. We've got to come up with a different way of doing things, and let's look outside the box about how we can approach some of these cost sharings and whatnot to make it a little bit easier for everybody. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And so I guess I leave it up to you to decide how you want to go about. Maybe we need to enter into more talks with, we have a new town city manager, and we have a new finance director. Nice to meet you, ma'am. I haven't met you yet. But well, we can sit down and work a lot of these things out with the user groups and everything to try and come up with what that cost will be. We're certainly not a 1% user like most of the other agencies are considered, but I needed to make sure that since this was going to be a new agreement, that I wasn't going to be held to something that I didn't sign. So that's kind of where we're at. I know that few of you have been there at some of the meetings and whatnot in the past. I think that it would be beneficial for you to continue to do that, to ask some of these same questions, and hopefully we can come up with some type of mathematical formula that would be fair for now and into the future. And so I'd like to have Lori and the others, and Heather and Jason or Justin, try to give their side of where they're coming from. I'm sure that I know that they have the same considerations that I do. How do we run a professional and pay for a professional dispatch center that we all need? This is a critical service that every single agency is going to need. And So I'm just looking at that. I need to try and keep these costs down. That's my consideration, is to keep the cost down as low as possible. So what else can we do to help make that happen for?
I suggest making crime illegal so people
Well,
quit
yeah.
doing it and then they won't call you.
Well, if we don't build
I'd
jails,
like to
we
know.
won't have any crime.
With our legislators, I don't know that's gonna happen, so. They're already trying to make it unpunishable, so, okay. That's kind of where I'm at. Again, I stress that I have to work with everybody, and I'm going to. I don't want to be a part of anything that's going to be a lot of bickering and fighting over stuff. I think that there's an adult, mature leader way to do this, and we should look at that. But I think it's going to take give and take on everybody. I really do.
So, with that, I'd like to pause and just read this portion out loud and stress that time is of the essence making a decision. It says that the annual budget shall be based upon the dispatch center study conducted by the Cortez Police Chief and City of Cortez Finance Director. A final and updated budget shall be received annually by the Accountability Committee per item. And I'm assuming that if you choose to sign this tomorrow, that you would do a resolution to make the sheriff our member of the Accountability Committee.
So
The cost-
let me stop you right there. So will there be 11, obviously there are 11 users in this agreement. Will every 11 user have one
One vote.
representative, one vote?
Except for Cortez gets 2 votes.
See, they already have one more than us.
Why do you get, I mean, how would I-
Because they're performing all of the administration.
So that's two different things though.
Yeah, but they provide all the IT, they provide all the support, they provide all the HR.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
But to counter that, I would say that if you move ahead with the community intervention program, you'll get 2 votes also. The costs allocated to each member shall be outlined in the annual budget, which the Accountability Committee shall review. The formulation of a yearly budget for dispatch services shall be by mutual agreement of the Accountability Committee and Cortez Police Chief. The yearly budget shall include an estimate of the operational costs for each member based on a percentage of calls. The billing statement shall reflect the member's use of the dispatch center as a percent of all members' total usage of the preceding year. There shall be a minimum billing of 1% of the estimated preliminary budget. And then it goes on to give deadlines. Preliminary budget, an initial preliminary operation and capital budget for dispatch services for the next fiscal year shall be presented to the accountability by or before July 31st of each year. So that's just 6 weeks away. Recommended budget no later than August 31st. Each member shall provide the recommended budget to their governing board, council, or entity for comment. So that would be the sheriff getting it back to you all. And then final requested budget for dispatch services for the next fiscal year would be approved. Sorry, let me scroll down. No later than September 30th of each year. And then Cortez City Council would adopt that as part of their annual budget by the end of the year. So, and then, of course, the capital equipment, that's all part of your 911 Authority
That's the
Board, which is you
authority, which
guys.
That purchases all of the equipment, correct, Lori? So
That's
with
correct.
us raising that fee, that takes care of the equipment. This is just the
Unless they keep
people-
tearing stuff up.
the people within the dispatch center and then the fees that are associated with power, water, space, so on and so forth.
There's $122,206, I want to say, that comes out of the 911 funds into the operations budget.
So that's the, what'd you say, the 122,206?
Correct. Correct, and that was proposed and implemented been sent forward to PGC to get the raise in cost. We were gonna raise that, I wanna say in 2023 to an even 130,000 for that operation to help offset some of this. Some of these. If that makes sense.
So are we still, along with PD, are we both still right around the 40 to 42% users? So basically, Montezuma County and the city of Cortez PD are the two largest.
By
are
far.
82,
By far.
84% of the whole.
And it of
Dispatch
course
center.
depends on the year, like the sheriff was talking, and it's usually the PD's higher, but this last year, the sheriff's office, moved ahead of the PD by, I don't know, 3%, 2%?
Yeah.
2% increase.
So,
And,
Okay.
and the way, and if there's a more equitable way to do it, you guys can tell me, I'll try to come up with it. But we've always used calls for service so that we enter into the CAD system. It's easy at the end of the quarter for me to go back and figure out a percentage of calls for service. You know, I talked to Montrose uses clicks of a mic, but I don't see any way that I can count clicks of a mic and come up with a fair number.
sure.
Well, and if I could also add that Lori has done some help with this. The thing is that I'm concerned with is that the sheriff's office and sheriff's deputies have more responsibilities and duties than any of the other agencies. We have fire management, I have search and rescue, we have public lands that we patrol, we have a lot more calls for service. And when you have a major wildfire or a search and rescue operation, there's communications going back and forth from the units in the field to the dispatch center. And so if we don't define exactly how these are to be, it could well exceed if it is, I don't think she's going to do a click by mic, but there could be something in there if we don't define that in this agreement so that we all understand what those costs are and what could be charged and what shouldn't be, what could be included, what shouldn't be.
So what are you estimating right now as far as our budget moving forward into 2022? Because we never have received an audit, correct? Well, I was part of those first initial meetings, and we had talked about that. There was some confusion or discrepancies of why we couldn't get the audit. John, I think, said that, you know, he was going to try to get that done. It never got done. And we still don't have that done, right?
Correct.
So-
The 2017 audit isn't complete, but from what I understand, there was some misleading information about why the users group hadn't been receiving financial statements for the period of, 17 through 20. It had to do with the previous finance director's misunderstanding about interfund transfers and how those flow through the balance sheet and the income statement. But there shouldn't have ever been a problem with you guys receiving information, even though it was unaudited. The revenue and the expenses for that fund and all the other funds within the city are correct.
Just to speak from a little bit of experience, I was fire chief way back. And, you know, to go in to the city and ask for accountability of dispatch services, and, yeah, we'll get that to you, and then never hear from them, and your board of directors is asking you for, you know, your line item accountability. Why is this so much? And for any chief or sheriff or to sit there in front of the governing body and say, I don't know, is not acceptable. You know, because I've been on both sides of that. And even as a board of director on the fire district, I'd ask the chief, well, what's the accountability? How are they charging us? And I don't know. And after a while, it just, I mean, this stacks up and you get a little bit frustrated. And I know other agencies are in the same boat. And we've got to justify ourselves financially because that's our physical responsibility up here.
I understand that. I apologize.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, it's not your fault.
And isn't the plan moving forward, Kelly, for you to present those or send those out quarterly?
Monthly.
That-
But
Boy, that'd be great. I tell you
I
what, that'd be
think
great.
the commissioner's initial
quarterly.
question was, do we have numbers for 2022? And this doesn't have those needing to be presented till the end of July, so we don't have those numbers yet. There is vague language of the formula of how those will be presented, but the subject at hand is you guys have got to make a decision of whether you're going to opt into this agreement or whether you're going to shop somewhere else. We need to make that decision soon so that we can appoint by resolution our member of the accountability committee.
Which we will do that tomorrow. Is all we're trying to do
Correct.
today is ask the questions that have been looming to try and get some answers. We
Yeah.
will make a decision tomorrow
Mhm.
based on the information we get today.
Correct.
So we do definitely understand where we need to go with this. It's just a matter of, we need the questions answered.
Right. And, you know, we have stuff here, and people, I don't know who made the notations on here. I don't have any idea.
That was Heather's.
But there's, I mean, they're good questions, Heather, if these are yours.
Well, and I will say, those were questions that I had at my very first meeting. I came into this project a little bit later on in the process. So I did have some questions at my first meeting when it was just Shaq and John and I. And then my questions have all been answered.
Okay?
My concerns have all been answered. I am absolutely in agreement with Steve that the costs need to be contained, if possible. I absolutely see that, because even for Mancos, I think one year we paid $70,000, and for that's huge for us. You know, so I absolutely agree that, the costs need to be contained. My misunderstanding or my frustration level came from not understanding how our bill was generated, because I had a meeting where I received some information, and then I received information from somebody else from the same entity, and like the calls for service were different, and the cost per call was different. And that was my, hold on a second, we both work for the same place, why am I getting different information? This agreement will resolve those issues, because rather than me coming in 9 months into a conversation, they're seeing these numbers every single month.
Mhm.
And the accountability committee will be able immediately to say, hold on, we have some questions. Hold on, we don't agree with this. Hold on, we want to talk about this. The accountability committee also, for myself, what was resolved was the accountability committee also now has a group of people who know what's happening every day over there, and they can say, we have a concern about how calls are being handled. There's now an avenue to get that done as a group among the users, and then there's a problem-solving resolution to that if the users can't resolve it. This agreement now outlines those. So all of my concerns were answered, like the 122,206. I was like, where is that? And Kelly gave me all of the information that I needed, and I was able to back into it. And that was one of the other things that we talked about. And in this agreement, there's language that says all of these revenues and expenditures will now be run through the dispatch fund. So non-finance people on the accountability committee can easily understand the revenues and the expenditures every month without question. And they can always ask help. Justin can always come to me. But 95% of the time now, the answers can be answered at the accountability committee level versus a year's worth of back and forth among 11 users.
So we are back to square one with this agreement, and I understand that, and moving forward, we're all gonna have a seat at the table. as far as this advisory committee or accountability committee, which is great. But a question still, and I think Lori, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said there was a fund there between $100,000 and $300,000 that still hasn't been accounted for, or is that been accounted for, or where?
There's a beginning fund balance and an ending fund balance, and I don't honestly know what the ending fund balance was. Ben had it at two different things. In one budget that he gave us, he had 200,000, and in the other one, he had 354.
So that to me is a big question. It's like, how much, since we're a 40+% user, is that of Montezuma County's that needs to be credited toward us? Do you see where I'm at? I mean, I don't have an issue necessarily with this IGA.
No.
As it stands and moving forward, because there's gonna be an accountability committee from all 11 users to be able to do this monthly, it sounds like, and to be able to go forward. But still on the backside of that is, that's a lot of discrepancy, 200, 350, where's my money?
And I'm not sure where Ben was getting that information. I don't know, I don't know.
So that's.
Welcome to our frustration.
That's the frustration. I could use that
Yeah.
$200,000 as a credit.
Bottom of that, this is, sorry, I probably heard this like my first day here, but, we've gotta get to the bottom of that piece. And we will on the backside. I get your frustration, and everything you're saying is absolutely right. So we need to dig into this and, figure out what that number is and get it to you and show you why. we built
So
that.
give me a time frame on that, because now we've been dealing with this for a year,
Okay.
or at least I have been dealing with it for a year. So now, I am not looking at either one of you, because I realize that you are both new, so this is not directed at either one of you, just to make that really clear. But the frustration level on the backside of it still is that we don't have an answer to the questions that we've been asking since the inception of this. So I understand that we're here to make a decision on this IGA moving forward, and it sounds like everybody is on board with it moving forward, but I still would like to have the back questions answered to see where are we?
I mean,
Where were we,
there-
and how much of a credit are we gonna get for the first year? Because if I'm looking, and if these are your notes, Heather, if we're looking at a 300 and,
Well, that's.
But
so
I-
don't know what you were looking at. I know for sure that we were all returned, and Lori can maybe answer this. I know
And-
for sure that we were all returned $100,000, split among the users.
Right.
That was credited to us in the bill, credited.
This
to
year.
us. Correct.
Correct.
The bill that we paid this year, we pay it this year, it's for usage last year.
correct, and I appreciate that, but that still 100,000 compared to 350,000 on this side, that's still a pretty
Let me
big
look
stretch,
at-
so.
So let me just interject just a little bit. So, and Kelly may have the correct figures by now. I don't know. She's been in there for a while, a month.
Yeah.
At least she still has all of her hair.
So,
Red hot minute,
But-
yeah.
yeah,
But what happened, there was one year where we were short dispatchers for half the year, so we came in way under what we budgeted. And that was probably the year that Chief Lane was sick. We had Ben as the new finance person. Nobody knew about the one agreement that said, well, we knew about the agreement, but we didn't know how that money was credited back to the users. So there were 2 years that users didn't receive. What do you call that? When you go under budget, there was no.
Rebate of some sort of.
Yeah.
so, okay, I get that. So, really, I guess the question that I have for the sheriff is, with this current IGA, the way it's printed, do you have any issues with it, and being, obviously a part of the accountability committee?
Well, I do, for the simple fact that a lot of these questions that we've been talking about costs, need to be in here. That's the only way that this is gonna stop, because if we don't sit down and figure out what those costs are gonna be and what we pay for and what we don't, then that's something that, this will always come up and rise up to be an issue. It will. And so we have to figure out a way in writing to make this to where you can look at it for face value and that's what it is.
So
Okay.
with what Shaq has highlighted here with the review, so it gets to the committee, what'd you say, by July?
The end of
30
July.
The end of
It's the end
July,
of July.
31st. That's where we get to do our review. Every user, all 11 users get to review it. And then we move forward with the annual budget. Do you have any issues with that?
No, I don't. I mean, that's a timetable that can be worked out so long as we can get something in this IGA that says that.
So
mean-
can you, Kelly, is that possible by the third week of July to actually have, the questions looming?
I like
So
her.
I-
She's got
I
a
mean-
positive attitude.
And I don't know how long it takes. That's why I'm asking you. I'm not,
I could have those numbers to all of you by the end of this week.
Okay. That'll
well,
help.
that's,
So I think one of the behind-the-scenes question that's still going on here says the formulation of yearly budget for the dispatch services shall be set by mutual agreement of the accountability committee, which would happen in July. The yearly budget shall include an estimate of the operational costs for each member based on percentage of calls. And I think as of 2 meetings ago, I think they were still trying to define how they were going to define a call. And so that's the part that's going to have to be worked out by the end of July. In order to present numbers, they're going to have to define what a call is.
Right, but
Yeah.
I'm also looking here at a question that came up. Quality assurance and dispute resolution. I didn't see that in here, maybe I missed it, but,
It's down a
There
little
was a
further.
dispute resolution in there that talked about
okay.
what to do, and this is to be
Does
brought
this
up.
come under the accountability committee?
Yes.
Okay,
And it's supposed to be brought up to the chief of police and I guess his other designee as well.
okay.
Um, yeah.
And quality, I mean, we're gonna have to have a certain level of quality of some sort. Maybe I'm misusing the term, but a certain standard that we operate under.
Mhm.
I didn't
Exactly.
see anything in there about that.
No, and that's one thing that I had brought up in the past and some, but mainly with the chief. At the sheriff's office, we have certain dispatch protocols that need to be followed. And when we don't have that, those are things that need to be brought to their attention. In the past, it was brought to Lori, and we just got to have the right person to take and address these. And it's always been really good with the dispatch supervisor, but
Yeah.
I don't know what will happen now because you're not listed in here.
Now that I've seen your dispatch policies, maybe that would be a good start if we have
Yeah.
a copy of them.
Well, your chief has them.
So right here it says operating procedures. The accountability committee shall review standard operating procedures and dispatch performance standards for the dispatch center. Recommendations of the accountability committee shall be presented to the Cortez police chief. So that would be your job if you move forward signing the IGA. It would be with you and the other people that are appointed to the accountability committee to create and enforce those.
All right.
And we would recommend that be a uniform policy across the agency.
Sure.
Right. We're
Correct.
putting a lot of weight on this accountability committee.
Yeah.
11 people.
Yeah.
So, if I can get to a point and we can, I could just say something about this for the future. I've been involved with a very large dispatch center for about 20 years, and a very small dispatch center. And I can tell you that costs are enormous on these things, and we can expect, all of us, that costs are gonna fluctuate, and over time, they are going to increase.
Sure.
We do need to try to control those calls, or those costs. But some of the things we get hung up on sometimes is things like calling them, cost per call for service. This isn't transactional.
Right.
We're not only paying just for the calls of service, I mean, we're there, we have to have people there 24/7. So it's an easy way for us, as, the administration, to explain that to a body like yours, is this is what it's costing us over time. But we need to understand that that's not transactional. Also, we need to understand that as these costs go up, capital, technology changes. Radios are enormously expensive. The consoles in there, they depreciate over time, and so somehow or another, Sheriff and others, we need to try to build in what it's going to take to ahead of time, what it's going to take to replace those items. So
Well, we've been
the
doing that,
accountability
yeah.
committee needs to keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing that. So,
Which, by the way, the sheriff needs new radios next year for the sheriff, not for the dispatch
Yeah.
center. So I'm just letting you know now.
Which
I'm
are,
working on grants, it's okay.
that's two different pots of money, though.
I'm just giving you the heads up since it's in
The
my
the
mind.
E911 fund takes care of all the equipment within the dispatch center, which we
And it points, and-
basically control, and
We
we,
got some of it by grants.
Yeah.
With the startup of it, we got it all by grants,
Uh-huh.
but then every replacement since then has been through the 911.
correct, which is what we just doubled
Right.
last year.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Do you guys have any, you can get that to us, Kelly, by next week, or
When you need it.
next week would be more than adequate.
Right.
It's the first time I've ever heard anybody say,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
get it to you
Okay.
next week.
Thank you.
yeah.
So
It's-
that's more than adequate.
I'll make sure that, it is out to the group that's here in the room today, before Monday morning.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, that, I hope you can see by our presence and our willingness to work with you, that we will be accountable, we will be responsive, and if you can give us a mulligan on the past and help let us move forward, I think we'll be pleasantly surprised.
We appreciate that.
We'll hold you to that.
Thank you.
I just appreciate,
Yeah.
I mean, getting an answer to say, I'll have it to you next week.
Yeah.
I was gonna
We've-
give you,
We've got more answers today
30
than we've had
days.
in
I
3
agree.
years.
I agree.
so
So let us deliver, we will
Yeah.
deliver as well.
the IGA as it sits right now, then basically with those questions answered, we don't have any issues.
Okay.
Okay. Are you guys?
Yeah, I think that was a question, Sheriff. Do
No,
you
okay.
have any issues?
Answer.
Because
sorry.
it'll be
Will you have any
the-
issues?
board signing this, not you. The
I
way-
have no problem with whoever, which one of you is gonna sign it, because, again, I still have questions that need to be answered, and they say that they're gonna provide some of that information, and we just need to work together on keeping it fair, that's all.
Correct.
I did this 24 years ago.
And
I know.
think we can do that, just knowing our concerns. We just want it fair. We don't mind
Yeah.
paying our fair share, but
Yeah.
obviously, just like you, the city of Cortez is the other largest group, or the other largest.
Let's just keep the dialogue going.
Yeah,
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
We thank you folks very much.
thanks.
Thank you.
thank
you.
you. Nice to meet you,
Nice to
both
meet
of
you,
you.
both of
I
you.
Very
I
nice
didn't
to
really
meet you
have the
guys.
opportunity to meet
You
you,
look,
Kelly.
you look better in person than you do on Zoom. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Drew. I have, is it the same one?
Yeah, you do. You gotta stay all afternoon.
I don't think we have him on again.
He's gonna be the one patrolling the break area, isn't he? Security in the break area.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Steve.
you.
See you tomorrow. Yeah.
All right, next on our agenda, which what did I just throw away? We have the social services break area discussion.
And so the commissioners will remember a couple of months ago that the Department of Social Services had requested an upgrade to the outside break area, which is just basically a picnic bench by the back wall. You've seen the reasons in your email for why they're asking for it and how it would be paid for. Basically, there was money from the state given on behalf of the employees that have to be used for some type of employee benefit, and this is how they decided that they wanted to use it, was to dress up the outside area, make it a little more secure, a little more comfortable, provide some shade during the summer and that type of thing. I know you've had those conversations. We do have 2 bids. You've all looked at both bids. I don't know whether you want to move forward with those. Are you comfortable with me putting the bids on the screen
I'm not,
in public?
No.
Okay.
because we don't want to display bids
Correct.
publicly until they're, I don't know if this was a public opening or if they just went to the social services department, but I don't.
This is below the threshold that we would be required to do a sealed bid, which is 50,000. It's
We-
far below that.
We
so.
have them, I think we can view them independently, and
Yeah,
they don't
Yeah.
need to be viewed at this point in time,
Okay.
but
until we make a decision.
Which you can't do till tomorrow. So.
I would like to see some kind of conceptual drawing of what they're gonna do, you know. I don't,
And I asked the same question, so was it the same as what they had last time? can
I
pull
think
that
it's
up.
pretty close conceptually to what's in the previous emails. I don't
So
remember
can
when
Gina
those
come down here
emails-
real quick? I mean, just,
Let me see if she's available.
no, I didn't ever see any drawings. You, Joel?
Well, just on the earlier bids, the first bids that,
yeah, which were in
And I
like
think that one-
January.
I think this one bid is the exact same as, same company and everything as the earlier ones.
Let me see if I can pull that up. Well, while we're waiting on that, we can go ahead and discuss it based on conceptually, if it was what was presented to us originally. Are you okay with that, Joe?
I'm completely okay with it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I mean, unless it's changed, and then she can give us that as she comes down. With looking at the costs, I can't imagine it have changed too much. Reading her synopsis here, you know, basically it's what, how do you guys feel about it? What do you want to do to move forward with it or not, or give them a decision one way or another?
And we can't decide today, but,
Can't make a decision, but we can have all
yeah.
the,
I think just depending on what she has to say, if it's basically the same project, I don't have any problem going forward with this.
I don't, I think it's their incentive that they earn, and if that's the way they wanna do it, and it's something that benefits every employee in this building, not just their department.
okay. Then do you want to just put that as, let's see, Shaq, do you have
I have it for unfinished business tomorrow,
unfinished business tomorrow?
which I assume we'll get to at some point.
Well, it may be late. We will get to it, but not sure
Yeah.
yet what some point might be. Okay. Tomorrow.
Cause that bid, one bid on there's only good till Friday, so we'd have to.
Okay, well, we'll move on then. If she has something to tell us that's different, then we'll make the assumption that it was the same,
Same as,
what was presented, I think, in February or so on. So the next we have is a landfill, air conditioning bid. It sounds like they
And-
want to change from evaporative cooling to
Yeah,
refrigerated
so
air.
this came up in my absence, so I wasn't 100% in the loop, but we apparently published a public notice. Montezuma County Landfill is seeking proposals to replace Resnor heating cooling unit of the main office, looking for an air conditioning unit / heating unit rather than a swamp cooler. Some new ductwork may be required. The new unit may replace the unit on the roof or move to location inside the office area. For a walkthrough at the site, contact Mel Jarman or Rachel Ablin at the landfill number. Solicitations and selection of final bids will be at the sole discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. The BOCC also reserves the right to reject any and all bids at its sole and absolute discretion, and the low bid may not necessarily be selected as the winning bid. Montezuma County does not discriminate against race, color, national origin, blah, blah, blah. One complete proposal package must be received at the following address by 4 p.m. on June 7th. And then that was obviously our building. So a couple of things here. For other buildings, maintenance would be in charge. However, landfill is an enterprise fund and they pay for their own stuff. So they've done all their stuff down there. So that's why that's not going through Mike. This only received one bid. However, the bid was due June 7th and the bid was received June 9th. So the question to the commissioners is, do you want to rebid it or do you want to open the one bid because we got a bid?
I don't think we have a choice but to rebid it. You can't open bids that are received 2 days late. And I mean, it's, when you put a date on there that the bids will be received, that's just my opinion. I mean, it's up to you guys. But the first
I-
the
question
thing
I
is, we only
have,
got one bid though, that,
But I think you're right. If we accept one bid late, we're gonna have to accept
Then we-
all bids.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
Right,
That's-
and someone
that's
else
something that we're
could
gonna
bring
get.
one in tomorrow and be like, here's my late bid.
yeah,
Yeah.
here's my late bid. So I think we'll really hurt ourselves if we accept it. I mean, they have the bid, it hasn't been opened, nothing's been displayed publicly, no numbers are exposed. They can just
change the dates on it.
change the dates and resubmit it, but it does have to go back out on at least our website.
How long do you want to leave it open for?
I think this could be quick. I think
A
you could do
week?
it 10 days and
10
be
days?
done.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think? I mean,
I
it'd be
think
quick.
so.
But the first question I have is why are they changing from evaporative cooling to refrigerated air? That is a lot bigger cost to the landfill as
So,
far as energy consumption and what we have to pay for power.
so that's a great question from Mel. Most of this took place during my absence, so that is a good question from Mel. I think that they would like basically a heat pump that's all one unit that goes back and forth, but I don't have that answer.
Okay.
I will
Could you-
get that answer,
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to understand why.
yeah.
I know
What kind
that
of heat do they have down there now?
The propane.
forced air, it's gotta be
Forced air
if it said
propane.
that some of the ducting could be utilized.
Mhm.
So I understand what they're trying to do. They're working on a combination unit, however, that takes a lot more power
And that would be
to-
strictly electric on that new unit,
for
Mhm.
refrigerated air.
for refrigerated air and the heat.
So,
Do
Well,
with the
would you-
propane heat.
No, you'd have to have the propane. You'd still have to have the propane to fire the burners for the heat.
I'll get an answer, but I really kind of want to BS my way through this and say water consumption.
I think power consumption is greater than water consumption, because it runs off of a 1/4 inch tube. That's all, I
Sure.
just curious. why you would wanna,
I can tell you that one time that where the current swamp cooler is, the float
I'm
got.
sorry, your evaporative cooler? There's no such thing as a swamp on top of a house.
Okay, one time where the current evaporative cooler is, the float got stuck in the down position and it flooded the office, and it's currently located above the computer, which is kind of an issue if that float gets stuck. Because by the time you crawl through the attic and get to it, it's water everywhere. Of course, yes, you go outside and turn the water off first, but by the time you do that, there's water everywhere. So, but that was one time in my 12 years there.
Is that an old unit?
It is an old unit.
Because I just personally, I like evaporative cooling better than refrigerated
And
air.
humidity hasn't been a problem lately.
Not
No.
lately, and typically only a few years out of the year.
Correct. And there's only so many parts to an evaporative cooler. You've got a pump, a float, and you've got your pads, and you've got your
Motor,
distribution
belts,
tubes. And,
Little motor, and that's it.
Bearings and
yeah. So I'm happy to have that conversation with
busting
Mel.
out pans.
Well, the newer units are much, I mean, if they need a new unit, I'm just curious why they're changing the whole system from evaporative to refrigeration.
Sure. I'll have
That's
an
all.
answer on that tomorrow.
I just curious.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so we won't open that bid.
We will not open it. We will redo it. Now,
Team up.
so apparently I've got a little correction on information here. I guess the Team Up mural went in and they want to do a different mural on a county building for substance abuse prevention. Just now, like at 2:18, got an email about that. With the images that they have for this project, and Arlena Yazzie will be here to talk about that tomorrow, and Laurel Schaefer.
So they're different than the two that were presented to us in the beginning?
Yes, that one already went in on Montezuma. So these are that's an example. Obviously, we're not Pagosa, and we're not Ignacio either. And so they'll present that tomorrow. But what the commission needs to think about, and I know you kind of discussed in the past, was walls that you feel could be made available. Because last time, if you recall, we went out and we looked at Jersey barriers out by the lake, and
That was a no-go.
that's kind of
Tiny.
nobody's going to see it, small. So, but we do have huge walls on this building, the road department buildings, the fairgrounds. We've got big walls everywhere that can actually be seen.
I think we offered up 2 or 3 of them at that meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to see their new graphics, because we did approve the 2 that they had.
Correct, but
I
these
would
are,
like to see
yeah,
what
these
they
are
want
not anything
first.
of what they,
Right.
proposed. It was the hands
Right.
Yeah, that's the one that's up on the wall.
on the wall
Wild
right
Edge
there.
Brewery.
So that's what they'll be presenting tomorrow. My thoughts are the buildings that'll get seen the most are either the east side of this building or one at the fairgrounds. Next most would be either one of the road shops going north, either on 145 or 491. Those are both visible a lot.
Again, because they said they only needed an 8 by 8 footprint over
Yeah.
here on this building, they utilized the whole building,
Yeah.
so we don't really know, they didn't give us any.
I don't have that information now.
So is that gonna go under unfinished business also?
No, they are on the agenda tomorrow.
Okay.
When Bobby and Laurel present the health department contracts that are for renewal, then they'll come in with them as part of the
Okay,
health
so
department.
part of that.
So it'll actually be sometime mid to late morning tomorrow.
So that, the only thing that we have right now are the 2 photos that you just showed us.
Correct, that's all I've got right now.
So
Oh,
we-
here's the one that they have from Montezuma. It's actually part of the body of the email. I'm sorry, it's not an attachment. Let me see if I can do that. The email came in at 2:18, so. And I can make that a little bigger. I mean, I don't know what kind of bluebird that is, but I feel everything would look better as a blue jay.
Yeah, he needs a top knot and a longer beak.
Go Blue Jays,
I
right,
don't
Joel?
think that would be common ground.
Would be if we did it in Mancus.
Yeah, we could put it on the Mancus Road
I guess
Shop.
we do have a road shop over there too. I guess we can do that.
We could put it on the Mancus Road Shop and maybe have like a panther on its back over here. Or maybe a bear, an upside down bear.
Yeah. Bird pecking him.
I don't really have any issues with murals. I think it's just a matter of what they want for size and viewing. You know, where's it gonna be viewed the most? And you're probably right, the fairgrounds would probably be the biggest.
We got some huge walls out there, and we gather crowds there.
So which building would we look at the fairground?
Don't we have a fairgrounds advisory committee?
No.
No, but we've got a Justin.
Yeah.
We've got a Justin.
I don't think he needs to make that decision because it's.
I don't
better
think
that
he
we-
really cares. I mean, I could ask
Yeah,
his
why would he
opinion,
care?
but
I would think like on
the
the
beef
west side
barn
of that main building there, right in the parking lot.
or the east
Side
side
of
of the
the-
beef barn. Yeah, the west side of the main building or the east side of the beef
Yeah.
barn.
And that would give it the most exposure out there probably.
So the west of the main building or the east of the beef? Or
They
north?
could like right there
East.
where the handicap parking is, right there on that corner of the
Mhm.
barn. That catches everybody that goes into that facility right, kinda right there, as far as viewing it.
Yeah.
Or the east side of the beef barn down there would, the other barns, they're
You don't
kinda,
catch it, you don't catch that, well, you would catch it from the highway if you're coming from Memphis to Cortez.
yeah, it's the only place, it would be in the fairgrounds itself,
Hmm.
would be the only
Yeah,
place
yeah.
to signify.
would catch it.
Something
I
to
think
do with
that main
substance
building right there,
abuse.
but that corner of it would be a good
On
spot
that north side.
on the north end there. on
Well,
the
that's a
west
great
side.
question
You
to
could
ask
see it if it
tomorrow.
was big enough.
Yeah,
You would
if
see
they
it
do it
from the
like they
road.
did this one over here, it'll be big enough,
Yeah, because they could use the whole top to bottom.
top to bottom, yeah.
Okay. Well, then that'll be part of the discussion with the signatures that we signed for the health department.
Okay.
Ooh, this agenda is getting longer.
Yeah. I thought maybe we'd all
Like I said,
just,
here on the next meeting.
I thought we'd all just bring sleeping bags tomorrow. Sleeping bags and marshmallows and
Do
we'll
we
just,
want to start at 8 o'clock tomorrow?
no, it's
already been
to, the
published.
public
Never mind.
notices are already,
I gotta go down to the Utes tomorrow evening and inspect cattle too, so I gotta get out of here by 6:30, so I got daylight.
Ooh. Okay.
So the deal here on the opioid settlement, we got a little bit of a brief while we were in CCI, and this will just save some of my reporting time tomorrow. But I wanted to let the commissioners know, and I've already sent out an email that you've received, but the AG's office is going to come through town on Friday, July 3rd. Is it Friday or Saturday?
Saturday.
July 3rd. And they'll be able to have a meeting, and they're also putting out an FAQ, a frequently asked questions deal, for ahead of that. But we are getting close to having that draft IGA which I emailed 2 or 3 weeks ago out. I hope you guys have all looked it over, and in the back of your minds be thinking about who it is that you're going to want to appoint for county representation on that board. Don't make an appointment yet. We also need to, and I want to see if the commission would be open to hosting. We need to get the whole region in one room to start these initial discussions, because in order to receive any of the monies from the opioid payouts, there has to be a plan put forward by the region, saying how the monies are going to be spent, at least a 2-year plan. And so nobody else in the region has come up with a plan yet. My suggestion would be, if the commission is open to it, to using our room, bring in the other counties and municipalities, and let's start developing those talks.
I don't have an issue with it. It's just
Okay.
our region again, our 5 counties.
Our 5 counties, yeah,
Dolores, Montezuma, Archuleta, La Plata, San Juan.
correct. And so I've had conversations with La Plata County about this. I've had minute conversations with Archuleta County and Dolores. I've not been able to get a hold of anybody in San Juan County yet, but I will. It's just a matter of persistence and being here. And finally, a revenue discussion. I was briefed by the county assessor that Kinder Morgan production for 2020 was down 36%. That's going to be a $1.6 million hit to the county. And also, the state senate voted last Tuesday to drop the commercial assessment rate 2.6%, and to drop the residential assessment rate 0.2%. So overall, to the county, we're looking at about a $2 million hit in revenue starting 2022. So need the commissioners to be aware of that in a public forum and start thinking about other ways, and you don't obviously won't answer this right now, but other ways to either make up revenue or cut services. And so now that's out in the public. We are looking at a declining revenue, and of course, insurance is rising. Food costs for senior services for the jail are rising. Fuel costs for fairgrounds, road and bridge, landfill, everybody that has a vehicle is rising. Nothing's going down in price, and revenue's decreasing. So you have been adequately warned.
Decreasing revenue, increasing costs, which is kind of what we had somewhat anticipated going forward this year when we were looking at, obviously when the shutdown came, and hopefully we can figure out a good way that's acceptable to everybody. It does bring up the discussion of, our sales tax issues, of what we talked about a little bit in the past. And then how do we want to proceed? Obviously not making a decision today, but just discussion. And then how else do we increase revenues?
And maybe that's a good question for you to call your constituents, the ones that you have numbers for, and say, hey, here's the situation. What do you recommend to fix it?
Yeah. So I think it's something that we all, and probably already been having those discussions a little bit anyway. I think we
Kinder
kinda-
Morgan being down 36% now with the same administration that we've got for the next 3.5 years, I would look for that to fall to 50% or
and it could
60, 70% maybe.
over the next 3.5
3.5
years.
years.
So I think we're going to be faced with that for the 4 years that
Yeah.
we're looking at it. I don't think that's going to go
Mhm.
away. So we'll definitely be looking at that as far as ways to backfill that. I think, using a portion of the art funding that we can use is one way to backfill for a
For
year.
temporary?
Temporary, it's a Band-Aid, but we have to look at a long-term fix that's gonna be, a replacement moving forward, so. Talk to the people out there, all of us, it's part of a campaign that we're gonna have to start and figure out how we go forward with it and take care of it. $2 million, a $2 million decrease is a big chunk of change. Anything else? Anything else on that, guys?
Not from me.
I'm good.
Okay,
All right.
all right, well, with that, then I would accept the motion to close this meeting.
You can just close it, can't you?
We're done.
Can't make any decisions, so we can't decide to close the meeting.
All right, well, then, this meeting will be adjourned at 2:45.
There we go.
Hang on one second.
Oh, is this Gina?
I don't know. If it is, I won't close the meeting.
No, we're good.
2, 3, nope.
Nope, we're closed.